Chers auditeurs,
Dear listeners,
bonjour.
welcome in comdarchipodcast Season 4
Saison 4, dans le monde fascinant des architectes.
and in the architectural projects.
Je suis Anne-Charlotte Deponte, passionnée d'architecture et docteur des universités en histoire de l'archi.
I am one of the spokespersons of Anne-Charlotte, who is a PhD in architecture history.
Merci
Thank you
d'être avec moi aujourd'hui.
to be with us today.
Et
And
maintenant,
now,
lundi en français, place au talent.
and Wednesday, let's talk projects. In English, of course.
Bienvenue dans Comme d'Archi.
Dear listeners, good morning. This is Esther on behalf of Anne-Charlotte. It's good to meet you again in this Comme d'Archi Season 4, Episode 58. Xavier Lagurgue speaks to you in this text based on his interview recorded on March 22nd, 2023. Hello, a few words of introduction. I am Xavier Lagurgue, architect, associated with Günther Domenig in the agency XLGD Architecture, which is a French-Austrian agency. I am also a professor of architecture at the Ecole Nationale Supérieure Paris-La Villette, and I am involved in various training courses, including the master Seb-URBABIO at the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle. Teaching naturally leads to scientific research. I have a doctorate in city and architecture from the University of Nanterre, and I am a researcher at the Xavier Laboratory, Group of Studies and Research in Philosophy, Architecture and Urbanism. My research topics concern architectural and urban ecology, and more precisely, the relationship between the living and the built environment. As such, I take the opportunity of this interview to announce the publication of a book in 2023 by Apogée, which will be entitled La végétation des façades, écologie et esthétique, and a symposium that we are organizing with Didier Larocque on the theme Ecology and Architecture. It will be held at the Cité de l'Architecture on March 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2024. The colloquium will propose the use of philosophy to shed light on the fundamental relationships that link architecture to ecology. To complete my presentation, I graduated from the ENSA in Bordeaux in 1986. Then I went to Mayotte as an architect for public buildings. My training then owes a lot to Jean Nouvel, where I stayed for 5 years before creating my agency in 1995 and where Günther Domenig joined me. I started teaching in the 2000s, first at Paris-Villemain and then at ENSA Paris-Val de Seine. I have worked quite a bit with China, notably in Wuhan, and I have contributed to the creation of a master's degree program devoted to ecology in architecture. Most recently, in 2021, I was invited during the fall semester to Cal Poly at the University of California, San Luis Obispo's School of Architecture, where I discovered new teaching modalities. Today, architecture for me is a discipline that is nourished as much by practice as by research and teaching. The three are inseparably linked, and in my daily life, these three modes of thought coexist and are in constant interaction. To come to my agency XLGD, it is structured in three fields. First, project management, which offers technical services with the skills of an architect, which covers technical expertise, economics, and site supervision. Second, architecture, which is our raison d'être, and through which we deal with all kinds of architectural and urban programs, public spaces, individual housing, industrial buildings, hotels, jewelry stores, restaurants, small museums. Among the distinctions obtained, we were nominated in 2007 for the Première œuvre de Moniteur and laureate of the consultation for the development of the Saclay Plateau, which preceded that of the Grand Paris. We received a Green Awards 2019 from the Construction 21 plan for a bioclimatic house in Martinique. Third and last field, scientific research. As part of the public-private partnership, the agency conducts research activities alongside laboratories and public entities. For example, our last research project was called Recré. It ran from 2019 to 2022. The project is backed by the Oasis Courts project, which aims to gradually transform the 750 schoolyards managed by the city into islands of freshness. The challenge of the Oasis courses is urban resilience in the face of the urban heat island effect. But it is also about learning to fight against segregation by life, ethnicity, and gender. Our research project used a sample of 10 courtyards to produce a model of the ecosystem services provided by courtyard vegetation. This type of project typically brings students into contact with concrete research programs that open up the architect's field of expertise. I now come to my activity as a practitioner. Our agency XLGD Architecture is small, with 2 associates and 3 to 4 employed architects. It claims an artisanal approach with a great variety of practices. We often compare ourselves to tailors, designing custom-made shelters that we try to weave as closely as possible with their environments. To answer the question, what lights would you give to everyone to apprehend the world in which we live? I would say that the evolution of the architectural discipline is not, or rather is no longer, given the climatic urgency, of the order of transition. We are faced with the necessity of a complete reversal of perspective and social utility. The real question that the discipline must now answer is to understand what architecture is for. In the recent past, architecture has served many interests that today are in question. But if we go back to ancient times, to the time of myths, we realize that the real purpose of architecture was to connect people to each other and their groups to their physical environment. We are in the process of rediscovering this utility in the art of designing buildings. At the time of the Anthropocene, the challenge for architecture today is to share the world between living beings, in the landing process described by Bruno Latour. And to achieve this, I believe in a path that makes a U-turn from the 2000 thinking of the star architecture. Small is beautiful. This is true in all disciplines, in agriculture, in architecture, in economics, in urban planning. The phenomena of the circular economy, for example, can only really be understood on a small scale. We often have a caricatured vision of ecology in architecture, through partial points of view, biosourced materials, energy performance, bioclimatic, etc. But the ecological functioning is of another nature. They bring into play the inert and the living, which implies that their understanding mobilizes intense forms of interdisciplinarity. These phenomena can also be described in physical terms as spatial and temporal successions of actions to which consumption, costs, and pollution correspond and which must be controlled. This leads to frugality, which in France is the subject of an interesting movement. In architecture and urban planning, these spatial temporal successions mean that a very small event that may be on the scale of a design can have very important consequences on the scale of a territory. For example, in 2007, during the international consultation for the Saclay Plateau, we were awarded the prize for the design of a playful public transport system to unify the plateau's territory. Finally, if I had one piece of advice to give to students, the hardest part is during the studies and then at the beginning of the practice, when many things remain to be learned. There is a sort of critical threshold to pass in terms of culture and know-how. At the beginning, everything is difficult, everything seems confused and intertwined. The first thing is to choose your teachers well. Of course, you have to learn how to do things, but you also have to learn how to learn. And for that, you have to be able to participate in the development of pedagogies that interest you and that you think are relevant to the issues at hand. Then, if you don't lose sight of your childhood dreams and if you keep your curiosity intact, it will be great because the architectural discipline allows you to do 1,000 things. Above all, it allows you to act and to be in touch with the reality of the world. Dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. Let's meet again next week for a new comdarchi in English. And until then, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. Thanks to Julien Rebours, sound engineer, who is collaborating with us today. Don't forget to tune in to our previews on Instagram at comdarchipodcast. If you enjoy this podcast, don't hesitate to promote it by giving it 5 stars and a little comment on Apple Podcast or on your favorite podcast platform. And above all, subscribe to listen to all of our episodes for free. See you soon, and until then, take care of yourself.